Okay, now I am recording. So Shavua Tov again. I won't repeat everything again. I'll just say that this last week we spoke about prehistory, this pre-Abraham, and this week we're going into post-Abraham or the actual world, the world that we live in. And we're going to, like last week, we'll start off with a bunch of questions. And the focus is going to be on the britot, on the covenants that were agreed between Abraham and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And on the Thursday, I heard a shiur from Rav Gisser. Him and his wife, I saw they wrote a similar thing of the shiur on the Brit Milah in Makor Rishon, in the Shabbat section. Rav Gisser is the Rav of Ofra. If any of you are interested, you can, it's recommended. But one sentence that he said right in the beginning, he said, we are the only people that we can boast, I don't think he used the word boast, but that we are B'nai Brit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We are Kadosh Baruch Hu's partners. We have got a covenant with none other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is something amazing. Now, there are two britot in this week's Parsha, and let me display a few of the questions, and then we'll talk a little bit, and hopefully we'll look at the questions again, and we'll see that the questions will hopefully be answered. Okay, can you all see the questions? Are they big enough? Make it a bit bigger. Try and make it a bit bigger. Yeah, put you all on that side. Okay. Okay. So the first question is, why the duplication of the very first word? Well, not the very first word, but the first vowel in the first pasuk. Vayomer Hashem el Abraham, Lech-Lecha, go yourself. I mean, you could have said, Vayomer Hashem el Abraham, Lech, go. What does it mean, Lech-Lecha? The next question we're going to ask is a question asked by the, I think by the Malbim. I heard it in a very interesting shur by Rav Eran Tamir this week. The Midrash says that the Amakastim, the nation where Abraham was born in, was such a lowly nation, such a Gashmi nation, that Hashem was sorry that he created them. Last week we spoke a little bit, what does it mean that Hashem is sorry, he changed his mind? Obviously it's not kipshuto, because they were meant to be created and they were created, but there's a message behind it. But nevertheless, this nation is so lowly, and Hashem Davkas chose that our father, the father of the chosen people, would be born in Kastim. Why? A similar question is, we know the terrible things that Chazal said about the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, and we're not allowed to marry Egyptians, and the great corruption that was in the Egyptian nation. Why was the Egyptian nation then, and the land of Egypt, chosen as the oven for the creation of the Jewish people? Okay, we went down to Egypt, a family, a bunch of people, 70 people. We came out a nation. Why did that have to be the place? Why couldn't we be a more yichastika place than Egypt? Okay, and then moving on to the britot that we spoke about earlier. Now, there are actually two britot. We speak a lot about the Brit Milah. It's commonly known as the bris in the Parsha, but before that, there's actually another Brit, the Brit Ben HaBetarim. And what are these Britot about? And especially the Brit Ben HaBetarim, Abraham taking animals, he had to chop them in half, 3 different animals. Maybe there were even 9 different animals, and put the two halves opposite each other. It seems pretty gory. I couldn't picture myself taking an animal and cutting it in half and walking in the middle. And why dafka these animals? And then the second Brit is the Brit Milah. Now the Brit Milah, there's a saying in the Gemara that everything needs mazal. Afilu sefer shebehechal. You go into shul and you see in the big shuls, you see 10 Sifrei Torah in the Aron Kodesh, and we only read one of them. Okay, sometimes Rosh Shabbat or whatever, Rosh Chodesh, you'll read two of them. But 90% of the time, one Sefer is read, and the others, Miskanim, they sit there. And the Torah says, the Gemara says, Afilu Sefer Shebechal, it needs mazal. And I was thinking, you can apply this also to mitzvot. We have 613 mitzvot, and some of them are luckier than others. Brit Milah is a very, very lucky mitzvah. Almost every man today does Brit Milah. There's some exceptions in places where people are really cut off from Judaism, or sometimes people are really idealistic in a negative sense and won't do it. But I think it's close to 99%, 98% of people doing Brit Milah. I don't think that's the case with hardly any other mitzvah. I mean, think how much time we talk about Brit Milah, the preparations for the Brit Milah, and even now in the Corona, you're not allowed to have a big Brit Milah, and then people go crazy, whatever. On the other hand, shatnez. How many people talk about shatnez, discuss the shatnez in their shirt, whether they took it out or didn't take it out? So how come Brit Milah had so much mazal? And we can't say it's because it's an easy mitzvah to do, because it's not an easy mitzvah to do. Right? I remember it was a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we went to a Brit Milah in Adam, and Shem, I think the Moel put the father under a bit of pressure. He asked him if he wants to do it himself, and he said no. And straight after the brachot, thank God he said the brachot already, the father was on the floor, he had fainted. Thank God he was okay, and they carried on doing the Brit. But it's not an easy mitzvah to do. And nevertheless, it's got so much focus, so important, and very, very few people even think of not doing it to their children. And I'm saying Brit Milah, even though this is mainly a woman's shiur, but I think the mother is no less of a partner in this mitzvah. We know that Tzipporah, Moshe's wife, did the Brit to one of their children, and the mother can do it, although there is an inyan for the father to do it because he's also chayav to do a Brit himself, but nevertheless, it's definitely a joint mitzvah. And the final question that I've written here is, why did Abraham have to go through so many nisiot, not so many tests, the 10 trials that he had? Why did he have to wait till 99-year-old to have his Brit and then have the baby? He couldn't have the baby a few years earlier. He had to wait and everything they went to. And finally, why did Ishmael have to be born before Yitzchak? I mean, think how much problems this caused us, right? The Arabs can claim that Ishmael's the Bechor, right? Why did it have to happen in that order? So I'm going to turn off the questions for a few minutes, and we'll talk. I don't know if it does this for you, just for me. I changed the view and we can see all of us. And let's try understand about the Britot as a starting point. First of all, the Brit Ben HaBetarim was the first Brit, the first covenant in this week's Parsha, but it's not the first covenant in the Torah. Do you remember we had a covenant last week, which was with Noach, with the rainbow? Okay, and it's interesting. When did this Brit happen with Noach? Noach, Hashem told him to build the Aron Kodesh, to the Teva, the ark. He went into the ark. He was there for about a year. He came out of the Teva. He, in his own initiative, as opposed to the ark that he built because Hashem told him to, in his own initiative, he started bringing sacrifices. And after the sacrifices, Hashem smelt the smoke, the smell of the sacrifices, and Hashem made his first covenant. So we see two things over here. First of all, we see that the Brit came straight after a sacrifice, and we see that it came after an initiative of man. The next covenant is the Brit Ben HaBetarim in this week's Parsha, where Hashem promises all things to Abraham, that his children will come, his offspring will come to Israel, etc., etc. And Abraham says, "Bameh eda ki irashena." And here again, we see an initiative coming from Abraham. And then Hashem tells him, Tikach lecha ez meshulash v'ayel meshulash, 3 different animals, meshulash. There's a different opinions what that word meshulash is. Obviously, it comes from the word shalosh, which means 3. Some opinions say they actually had 3 of each of the animals. Some opinions say it had to be the 3rd born of each of the animals. In other words, not the oldest, not the second, but the 3rd one in the family. Some say 3-year-old. Nevertheless, we see the number 3. And Rashi goes and explains, according to Chazal, that these 3 animals are the same 3 animals that are brought as sacrifices in the temple many, many years later. And Hashem's answer to Abraham when he said, Ba'me'edah, Abraham was actually saying, but what schut will I know that my children will be worthy of coming to Israel? And he says, B'schut ha'korbanot, the merit of the sacrifices. And the birds also, the 2 birds, the only 2 birds that you can bring a sacrifice, the Torah and the Gozal, the pigeon and the dove. And again, we see, just like the first Brit with Noach, a connection between Korban and the Brit, and a connection between a man's initiative and the Brit. And the final one is the Brit Milah, the Brit, right? And here, actually, the Zohar, I saw a few times in this week's Parsha, very, very interesting, compares parents giving their kids a Brit Milah to bringing a sacrifice. You know, and this relates to what I said earlier, the story about our friend in Adam. It's not easy. It's an exciting thing. It's a happy thing for a Brit. But you know what? It's not easy taking your 8-year-old son and putting him in front of the moil, and maybe he's going through something that's painful. I remember with our oldest son, he was very jaundiced, and it was touch and go whether he'd be able to have the Brit on time or not, Yigal. And I think when he was about 4 or 5 days, I had to take him for a blood test, and the nurse pricked his hand and took a little bit of blood. It was terrible, right? In fact, when I was thinking about the shiur, I was saying that maybe that's the reason that Chazal said, we say Shema Yisrael just before the Brit, so the father can sort of, hide his face and not even look at it. And the Zohar calls this a sacrifice. And I was actually thinking, I didn't see this written anywhere, but I was thinking it's a sacrifice and it's not a sacrifice. From the point of view of the parents, it's a sacrifice. You feel like, God forbid, what are you doing to your son? But from an absolute point of view, from an objective point of view, you know that Baruch Hashem, 99.9999% of the kids are Beseder, and otherwise we wouldn't be doing this, the Brit Milah. But you still have that subjective difficulty. And it reminded me of what Chazal say about Abraham sacrificing Yitzchak. Right at the end, there's a midrash that says, Abraham turns to Kadosh Baruch Hu when the angel said to him, don't sacrifice him. Abraham sort of says to Kadosh Baruch Hu, what's going on? First you tell me I'm going to have a child and he's going to inherit me. And then I have the child and you tell me to sacrifice him. I don't understand. It doesn't go together. But I listen to you. And then I go and I'm about to sacrifice him and then you tell me not to sacrifice him. And Hashem says, I didn't tell you to sacrifice him. I told you to put him on the altar. And if you look carefully at the words, ta'alehu le'olah, but it didn't say sacrificing. But Abraham didn't know that or didn't realize that. And Hashem wanted Abraham not to realize that, so to speak. Abraham, from his subjective point of view, had to feel that he was sacrificing his son. And I think maybe this is what the Zohar tells us, that when we give the Brit Milah, it's almost like we're sacrificing our son, God forbid, but we're not sacrificing our son. Because that's something that we would never do and we don't do. Again, we see that this Brit Milah comes from also Abraham's initiative. He said just before that, what's going to be with me? Who's going to inherit me? Well, Ben Meshach Eliezer, my trusted servant, he's going to be my inheritance. And then we see the connection to a sacrifice. So what is a sacrifice? And through this, I think we understand what is a Brit. And based on this, I think we'll get a very, very deep understanding of Bichlal, of what is our role as Jewish people, or people as a whole in this world. And so let's first of all look at the word Brit, Korban, right? A Brit is a covenant between two people. Korban comes from the word karov, brings two people closer together. In order to have a Brit, it's interesting that the letters Brit, Bet, Resh, Taf, all twos, right? Bet is 2, Resh is 200, Taf is 400, twice the 200. Everything is about a duality. And what I want to say is that, and we saw that there's the Korban, and we also saw that it's always man's initiative. That Hashem is coming and telling us that I didn't create the world for you to be puppets. I created the world for you, so to speak, to be my partners. And one of the things we're saying in Anim Zmirot today, Hu yitpa'er bi ki hu chafetz bi. It doesn't make sense. Hashem is proud of me. Hashem really has nachas from me. But that is the actual relationship that Hashem wants from us. We said in each of these britot there were two conditions. One was the korban, and the other was that the initiative came from man. And this relates to a Hasidic idea that's mentioned in the pasuk. We say it every Friday night on Kiddush. Asher bara Elohim la'asot. Okay, by Yehuda Zaks, we summarize the whole of the creation of the world, and Vayishbot Bayom HaShvi'i Asher bara Elohim. We should be able to stop over there. The world that Hashem created, la'asot. Hashem. We say it so often. We often don't think about the word. Asher bara Elohim la'asot. What's that la'asot doing over there? So a lot of the commentaries explain that the la'asot, the Gra and the Al-Sheikh, the la'asot says that Hashem didn't complete the creation on that Shabbat. Hashem completed his part of the creation, and now the ball moves over to us. And there's a famous midrash of Tonnos Rofus, can't believe I said that right, comes to Rabbi Akiva, and he says to tell me, whose deeds are greater, Hashem's deeds or man's deeds? So obviously he's expecting Rabbi Akiva to say Hashem's deeds. Seems like the no-brainer. And Rabbi Akiva said, man's deeds. And Tonnos Rufus says, what? You're talking nonsense. So Rabbi Akiva, in good Gemara logic, he says, tell me, what do you eat? Do you eat bread or do you eat wheat? Okay, the wheat is made by Hashem, and the bread is made by man. So we see that the bread, especially if it comes from Herbie, is much tastier. So man's deeds must be greater. So Tonnos Rufus jumps up. He says, "Well, why do you bris yourself?" And Rabbi Akiva said, "I knew you were going to ask me that, and that's why I answered what I answered." And the answer is exactly in this pasuk that we said. Hashem created the world incomplete. And why did Hashem create the world incomplete? In order that we'll be partners of Hashem. Now I'm going to share with you something that Ketzler showed me after in davening 2 weeks ago, Parshat Breshit, that's very interesting. You see the pasuk that I've just put, the very first pasuk of the Torah, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. What's called Sofei Tevot, the last letter of the three first words, are Taf, Aleph, Mem. If you change the letters around, Aleph, Mem, Taf, you get the word Emet. Okay? So the Emet is in the creation, but it's in the wrong order. This is the very first verse of creation. And now we skip to the very last verse of creation, the one we've just spoken about, Asher bara Elokim la'asot. And here we see the Sofei Tevot are exactly the same letters, Aleph, Mem, Taf, but this time Emet is in the correct order. And what I think this comes to teach us, the same lesson that we said before, that only after man has done his part, only after we've done the la'asot, that's our contribution, only then is the world complete. Not because Hashem is not capable. Obviously, Hashem can do anything. But Hashem had a world that was Hashem's world before he created the world. what Hashem wants us to do, when Hashem once created the world, in order that there'll be olam koach betachtonim lasot tov, that we down on this world can complete the creation, that we can be the partners of Hashem. There are a couple of others. Another example of this, I heard many, many years ago by Moti Alon in Shurim, where he speaks about Kviyat HaChodesh. Okay, and we know that according to the Jewish year, we have a lunar year, well, mainly a lunar year, although we correct it according to the solar as well. In other words, we look where the moon is, and when the moon's done a complete cycle, we say 1 month has passed. But there's a little catch, that the time it takes for the moon to go around isn't 29 days and isn't 30 days. It's almost exactly 29 and a half days. So what do? No problem. We have 1 month, 29 days, 1 month, 30 days, and most of the time the months alternate like that. But the problem is that I said almost, and that little fraction causes confusion. And every now and then we have to make one of the 29 days the 30 days. And that was the whole story of Kviyat HaChodesh. Today we did it all according to the calendar, but during the time of the temple, before we used to rely on the calendar, used to use the calendar always to check it, we used to rely on the Eidim, and the Eidim used to come and see. Now, sometimes the Eidim, sometimes it was cloudy, and the Rosh Chodesh should have been on the 29th, but because nobody saw the moon, it was made the 30th and the 30th. And Yom Kippur was a day later, and whatever Chag was, everything was a day later. Maybe a month later it was all corrected. But that's where Hashem decided it should be. And what Moti Alon said, this is like two people making a date. You know, two people come, we've got to have a meeting together. So what do? I come with my diary, you come with your diary. I can do Sunday, Monday, you can do Monday, Tuesday. Okay, we'll have the meeting on Monday. Okay. He's saying this is what happens every single month. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what, 29:30 is good for me. Am Yisrael comes 29:30, I'll choose which one it is. And together, Asher bara Elohim lasot. In other words, we do the korban. And what is the korban? The korban is we do things together. Another example of this in the Mokorot is that Chazal say that the Melachim, the angels, do not say Kedusha until Am Yisrael starts saying Kedusha downstairs. Why is that? Again, the same idea that Hashem wants the initiative of movement, of change, of growth in the world to come dafka from us here and on the lowest level of all the worlds. The initiative's got to come for us, and we complete the world. And that's what a Brit is about. Okay, the Brit between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that we are the leading people, and therefore we take the initiative, and that gives us the koach to bring a korban, and that's what makes us who we are. I'm going to the last question that we asked. We'll go back to the questions a second. Okay, this wasn't the last question, but let's look at the questions again, and before we move on to our next point. Okay, so we're starting to get a bit of an understanding why we need the covenants. Each covenant, we spoke about the similarity of the covenant. We haven't spoken about what's unique about them. And now I want to deal with this particular question. Why did Abraham need to be born in Kasdim? The Maharal explains that in order for us to appreciate something, you have to see it against its contrast. In the simplest understanding, if you want to see, take a candle, light the candle, take it outside into the shining sun, you won't be able to see if the candle is alight or not. Okay, it definitely won't help you guide your way around to find your way to to the makolet or whatever, having a candle. On the other hand, when there's a power failure and everything is pitch black, you'll take exactly that same candle, you'll light it, and wow, that candle will give a full fortune of light. That's on the simplest level. On a deeper level, when we talk about qualities, people quality, it's not just that you see, appreciate the contrast, things through the contrast, but actually that's how you, and I'm going to use the Hebrew word now, and you'll see why in a moment, you'll mitpa'el, okay? Mitpa'el is when you're amazed at something, you're excited about it, okay? When a person goes through the same thing all the time, if we had summer every single day of the year, we wouldn't appreciate summer. But dafka, after you have a few rainy days, icy days, classic Beitel weather days in the winter, and then you have this one sunny day, wow, you appreciate it. This hitpa'alut, this wonderment, is also the basis of why opposites attract. Why in every marriage there's some element of opposite besides the sexes being the opposite, which is the basic, but even in the personalities there's something opposite. Obviously you need some similar, some commonality also to build your relationship on. But if you're going to be two identical people, there'll be no development. And the development comes through the differences. And the reason why I wanted to use the word in Hebrew, hitpa'el, instead of just saying wonderment, because the shoresh, the root of the word hitpa'el is po'al. What brings something to move, what causes change in the world is the interaction. Okay, if you think how our legs work, right? If you try and hop on both legs, you may be fit, you may be able to move a little bit, but it's not very effective. To really move fast, you move one leg forward and one leg back. Okay. And that is the interaction. What the cause of growth in this world is interaction. That's why, by the way, the Gemara is full of machlokot. Okay, I remember once when I was still in South Africa, one of my Talmidei Chachamim friends, he said, you know what the proof of that Chazal had a sense of humor? When they said, Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. And you open the Gemara and you see every page, you see hundreds of machlokot, as in shalom zeh. But the truth is that that's what causes the growth. If you're able to have a machlokot, a disagreement with a person, and argue your point, and the other one argues his point, and you're not arguing against each other as people, but you're arguing against clarifying the understanding, then you can grow and you reach an understanding that you didn't have before. That is the hitpa'alut. Now I want to bring this back to the Brit that we said. Why does Hashem want to have a Brit dafka, not with the angels and not with another high force? He wants a Brit with us. Because that's part of the hitpa'alut. And that was the same reason that Abraham was born in Ur-Kasdim. Okay? By the way, I think it is from a personal point of view also. Well, I remember when I was younger and soon after I came from, I was a bit of a complaint to Hashem. Why did he make me be born in an environment that I hardly learned anything as a kid and had to sort of catch up a lot to get to the stages where other people were? And as I got older, I understood that I got so much from being in a different environment that every stage of my growth I was challenged, that probably the fact that I can give a shiur to people today is thanks to the fact that I was born in an environment that wasn't frum. It wasn't like everybody else. And lahavdil, Abraham was born in Ur-Kasdim. Abraham Avinu, the founder of the Jewish people, had to be born in Ur-Kasdim. And Am Yisrael, that we're going to change the world and going to bring the growth of the whole world, had to be born in Egypt. And I want to take these points. I want to try and see now if we've answered all the questions, and then bring this to a summary, because I'm aware that the clock is ticking. So, computer. Okay. So, first of all, what is the double meaning of Lech-Lecha? Lech-Lecha is the two lechs, the Lecha-Lecha. I'm taking Abraham and I'm taking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Hasidim say Lech-Lecha is walk into yourself. Take your physical self and walk into your spiritual self. Either way, the idea here is the two opposites that are in you, Lech-Lecha. And we said earlier also that that's the action of walking, that one leg's forward and the other leg goes backwards, and that's how you progress. We saw why Abraham needed to be born in Ur-Kasdim, and why also Am Yisrael had to be created in Egypt for this heat pa'alut, for this growth. We see the significance of the Brit. We see that each time the Brit came, because of our initiative. Why? Because we are B'nai Brit of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We've got to be all, so to speak, equal partners. We've got to be the initiatives. Because if we initiate the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Shuvu Elai, and only afterwards, Ashuv Alechem, then he'll make the connection to us. That's why the angels will not take Kedusha until we start first. And that's why Abraham actually took these animals, split them in half, the two halves, everything coming in pairs also, the front half of the animal and the back half of the animal, the physical part of the animal and the spiritual part of the animal, and so to speak, Abraham and the fire symbolizing Hashem going in the middle. That's what the Brit is. We can understand now why Brit Milah is so important, why everybody, every Jewish family in their subconscious, if not conscious, observes it, because we feel that this is our connection. We are B'nai Brit of Hashem. This is what actually the whole purpose of us being here, doing mitzvot and living in the world is all about. I didn't answer why Dafka, the sexual organ, but I think the point over there is that Dafka, this Brit is so important that we do it on the place where we procreate. We do it on the place where we emulate God. The amazing thing that man, he can do amazing things, but the most amazing thing that a person can do is create another person. And therefore, the place to make sure that this Brit is done correctly is Dafka on that organ. We didn't answer why Dafka 8 days. 8 days, I'll just mention it briefly what the Maharaj says, that 7 days is the 7 days of creation, the 7 days of this world. 8 is beyond creation. 8 is when we take what Rabbi Akiva said, Tunus Rufus, we take God's nature and we take it to a higher place. Asher bara Elohim la'asot. And that's why the Brit is Dafka on the day that symbolizes 8. And Avraham Avinu had to go through the growth period. Avraham Avinu he couldn't be passive as Noach was. And he had to go through a stage by stage until he was 99 years old. Only then was he worthy to have his name changed from Avram to Avraham and Sarah to Sarai, both of them being the leaders of the whole world, only after they had grown. And the point of Ishmael, what a lot of Hasidim say, indirectly related to what we've discussed, is that part of this growth was actually to remove from within Abraham the negative influences that he had of his childhood, the influences of being born in Kasdim, which on the one hand was essential, as we explained over here. On the other hand, there's an effect over there, and part of waiting and part of putting that effect in Ishmael and not in Yitzchak was the reason why Abraham had to wait for so long. So taking this all, I think the most important thing of any shiur is, what does it mean for me? Okay, where do I take it? You hear the ideas, you may remember all the ideas, you may not remember all the ideas or some of them, but I think the important thing for us is to remember is that we are B'nai Brit of Hashem. Hashem has chosen us, as we said, the line in Nim Zmirot, Hu Yitpa'er Bi. He is walking with us. Sometimes a husband and wife are walking together and you don't know who's more proud. Is he more proud of her or is she more proud of him? And so to speak, that's how we're walking in this world with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're so proud. We're the people of Hashem. And Hashem, so to speak, These are my, this is the Mashal or Shira Shirim, right? This is my wife. And this is what we should feel, that when we're doing a mitzvot, we're not doing it just because Hashem told us to. We're not just observing what we're observing. We actually got to think how to take the initiative, how we can do something that's will make a difference. And whatever we do, and sometimes we're not certain what we want to do, and sometimes we debate, but even that debate, even that dilemma is part of Avodat Hashem and brings us closer to Hashem. Bezat Hashem, that we'll manage to go continuing in the derech that Avraham Avinu started for us, and we're all continuing. Shavua Tov.
And thank you very much.